Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy BDELL. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. In tonight's transmission, ladies and gentlemen, we must extrapolate why the veil is thin, because the planet is in a state of emergency, because the planet is going through a metamorphic shift. Now, all this is esoterically connected to the 2028 smart cities. When you're talking about the Golden Dome, the big one, volcanoes and earthquakes, and the fall of Western civilization in totality. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you already know what time it is. Get those notes out, because we're going to demonstrate the edification tonight. I'm going to give you the clarification that you need to understand what's going on in full spectrum. So the shift is taking place right now because, like I said, we're at the apex of solar cycle 25. Solar cycle 25 creates a magnetic energy that contains magnetic filaments, and that gives a intrinsic electrical conduction to planet Earth, to where you have an influx of volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, right? That activates the seven thunders. So we finna get into it. Now, when you're looking at this paradigm graph that I put together that's talking about the metamorphic shift, one thing you gotta understand is that planet Earth is a living entity. The land is conscious. And the reason that is because Earth remembers what we forget. Because when you look at the genetical structure of planet Earth, the mountains is the bones, the rivers is the blood, the wind is the breath, the fire is the spirit, and the trees is the nervous system, and the soul of the planet is the black sun. The black sun is also esoterically connected to the 2017, 2024, and the 2023 solar eclipses. So this is why I was telling you guys about the volcano at the Seamount Axle in Oregon. That's basically in alignment with Mount Shasta, because Mount Shasta is the root chakra of planet Earth at the same spot where they had the solar eclipse in 2017, right? So it's not a coincidence, because if that volcano goes off underwater, where Mount Shasta is at, it's going to trigger over 10,000 earthquakes. And that can activate the great majority of all the fault lines in the geographical landmass of America. So this is why you see the ancient Hebrew Tav symbol, or the ancient Hebrew Af symbol, that basically puts an encryption over the geographical landmass over the United States of America, right? So this is the apex of the end of the corporation. So this is also in alignment when I was talking about the smorgasbord event, the final sacrifice, because they said that they found over 1 million unusual giant living eggs found inside the active volcano, and the scientists were left, speechless, right? Because one thing you got to understand about volcanoes, the great majority of, extraterrestrial entities, or when you're talking about draconian reptilian, they feed off the loosh in the energy of the volcanic eruptions, right? So it's not a coincidence. So this is also in connection with, the Cascadian Seduction Zone, the New Madrid fault line, right? So then you got the Leviathan. So how you know that this underground volcano is not a headquarters for Leviathan to place the eggs, to where you have the smorgasbord event? Because one thing you got to understand about the simulation that's taking place at hand, you got two different timelines that's going on. And so it's kind of like a video game. It seems like they got to create all these, cataclysmic events and all these afflictions on the planet in order to, get to the next level. It's kind of like when you play in a video game and you got to complete every mission. It seems like these rituals are the missions that they got to complete in order to have an engineered reset, because you're going to have a prophetic reset and an engineered reset. The prophetic reset is being engineered by the Elohim, or when you're talking about the Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them, angelic beings or extraterrestrials, whatever, that's going to come. The prophetic reset is coming from those entities. The engineered reset is taking place within the factions of, the socio-political aspect of government, right? These hierarchical government leaders, what we call the plutocracy, right? So the engineered reset is coming from them. So it seems like they have to create many different rituals on the planet to hit the reset button on an orchestrated level before the Elohim resets. So that's why I said it's two different diametrical timelines that's taking place, right? Because like I said, Mount Shasta is the root chakra of planet Earth, and Mount Shasta in Northern California, there's an interstellar vortex portal in that geographical area. And that landmass, it radiates a magnetic energy, and it's connected to the Cascadian subduction zone. So there's an energetic role that takes place when you're talking about that landmass, because that landmass is a hidden temple. When you're talking about the C-axle fault in Oregon, which is basically, on the demarcation line in between Oregon and Northern California. So that's indigenous land masses, right? So that's why I said the land is conscious, because the conscious people, the indigenous people, is connected to that land. So it's basically like a intrinsic occult sanctuary. So that's why that landmass is very important. So one thing you also got to understand is that these land masses that's going to be activated with these volcanic eruptions and the earthquakes or whatever, the apex of it started with the solar eclipses. Now they just recently had, many different earthquakes in California. You had 22 earthquakes in the past 24 hours, 138 earthquakes in the past 7 days, 568 earthquakes in the past 30 days, and 8,610 earthquakes in the past year, right? So the C-Mount axle and Mount Shasta sits about right here. So this is a big fault line. And then you also have the Cascadian subduction zone within this range. So it's not a coincidence that the axle seamount, where the volcano is at underwater, is here, right near the Cascadian subduction zone that will activate all these fault lines, the San Andreas fault line, the New Madrid fault line. That's not a coincidence, right? And they say that this volcano can erupt by anytime between the time of June 5th. That's what they say. Now, as I was telling you, coronal holes contain magnetic filaments, and magnetic filaments has an electrical conduction that activates the magnetism of planet Earth that creates neutrinos, and those neutrinos activates the planet, because the neutrinos are Holy Ghost particles, right, that activates the Kundalini spirit within the planet and within the indigenous people that's connected to the planet. Because I was telling you guys that the indigenous people, where you have the Mount Shasta and the C-Mount axle in Oregon or whatever, that's ancestral land, right? That's our landmass, right? So it's all going to start with this whole, phenomenon that's going to be taking place. These neutrinos that's coming to the planet are the ancestors, right? Because when you understand the metaphysical energies of death and rebirth and resurrection, when a person dies, when a high vibrational ancestor dies, their soul and their spirit and their essence goes into the sun, and they project back down on the planet in the form of a neutrino or a solar flare, in the form of gamma radiation. And that's what's creating the ancestral energy in the ancestral activation, or what we call ancestral technology, AI, the true AI, right? So these energies, these coronal holes, is also the embodiment of the lamb symbol. The lamb symbol is acclimated to those who have the non-ether, right? So it's connected to the Fibonacci sequence of Mother Nature, which is the fingerprint of God, right? So when you look at the coronal hole, when you look at my cursor right here, it's showing you the lamb symbol. Then when I go back up top, it's going to show you the same sigil system, right? Because one thing that you got to understand about sigils are highly magnetic, that attracts other magnetic energies. So that's going to increase the electrical coherence of that electrical grid node. See, even when you look at the walls of ancient Kemet, it's showing you the same symbol, right? Because I told you, neutrinos, solar flares is a form of resurrection, because that's Osiris, right? And he has the Kemetic instruments in his hand, which is the crook and the flail, which is a representation of Alpha and Omega, which is the 19, beginning and end. So the meek shall inherit the earth. So that's why the planet has to go through a restoration and a supplication process in order to get the land back to the indigenous people in a form of reconstruction. Because we have to revitalize the landmass, because there's going to be a new intelligence that's going to be coming to the planet that's being streamed down from the mental plane of what we call the magnetosphere, right? So it's going to activate certain neurological functions in the brain to where you're going to start building, just like the ancestors did when they went through a process of desolation. Because when Atlantis fell, they built up Lemuria, Kemet, and Tartaria, right? We had many different fifth dimensional civilizations that we had to go through once it hit a state of calamity. So there's going to be a new intelligence on the planet because the veil is very thin right now, right? So these energies, you have to absorb these energies. We're in solar cycle 25, right? This is the time to be fasting, transmutating the energy as an alchemical resource to level up mentally, physically, and spiritually, right? You got to be balanced energetically to withstand this cosmic shift and this paradigm shift that's going on the planet right now. Now, I think I got a video to show you guys. So let me get my videos because, I went over a little bit. So I'm going to show you guys a video that's connected to everything that I'm saying. Because everything that we do on this channel, we're going to show the receipts. We're going to show the receipts that's, connected to everything that's taking place. Right? So, yes, here we go. Because it was talking about Mount Shasta. All right. So we was talking about Mount Shasta because I told you that they use weather modification and frequency modification to manipulate the weather. And the reason they do that is to lock down the DNA enhancement of Mother Nature. So I'm going to show you this video on how they geoengineer certain weather in certain geographical locations, such as Mount Shasta, because Mount Shasta is the root chakra, and that's where the regenerational spinal fire has to activate the planet. That's where it's going to start at. That's the inception point. So I'm going to play the video.
Here's the big dogs. Since 2006, the snow on Mount Shasta has 5 times more aluminum, 61,000 micrograms per liter, than the soil underneath it. Pure white snow has more aluminum in it than mud. Can you beat that? The snow water is unsafe to drink on Mount Shasta. How can white snow have more aluminum than mud? Now, the aluminum content of rain should be 0, with a pH of 5.5. When jets are not spraying, maybe so. When the jets are spraying, we get up to 13,100 micrograms per liter and pH up to 100 times normal. It goes really alkaline. This is over 13 times the federal safety limits for drinking water. Don't drink the water.
You see what I'm saying? They're geoengineering the weather. Why? Because we're going through a metamorphic shift. They know that these neutrinos can activate the chakra points of planet Earth. They know that for a fact, right? So this is why they're doing so much weather modification right now. We're in solar cycle 25. So that's why I was saying, because Mount Shasta is the same place where you had the Cascadian Subduction Zone, right? And the same place where you had the solar eclipse that took place in 2017. And it's acclimated to the Pacific regions when you're talking about the Ring of Fire you see at the bottom right here. So the Seamount Axle, the Cascadian Subduction Zone, Mount Shasta, and the Ring of Fire on the Pacific coast, this is all energies right here. So when these energies is activated, it can activate all the fault lines on planet Earth, because it said that it can activate over 10,000 earthquakes in one day. So it's going to trigger all these fault lines eventually, right? So now like I said, when it comes to westernized, media and these westernized publications that shows you many different things that they call prophetic, you got to understand that these are also dog whistles and warnings, right? Because there's a codex, they speak in language. You got to understand the language in order to understand the agenda that's being played out at hand. So everything they do is in the form of a ritual. So it says New Baba Vanga says July 2025 will bring a major disaster that will affect millions, right? Because as I was telling you guys before, every seculum of a cycle, every 80 years, there's a crisis that takes place because you have an unraveling of consciousness, an unraveling of DNA, an unraveling of everything that's connected to the dismantlement of Western civilization, right? So this is why it says a stark warning from the government. Breaking news, move away from the coast. Tsunami warning after 6.1 earthquake hits, right? So this is all connected to the smart cities, right? This is, like I said, it has to go through a desolation process. This is why you got to watch the movie Paradise, right? Because the reset took place, then that's when they built the smart cities. Everybody need to watch this TV show on Hulu called Paradise. This is the closest thing to the truth, right? You got to watch the movie Childhood's End and Paradise. And when you both put those together, these are both sci-fi movies, extraterrestrial and prophetic end time type, movie. So this is, it's one of those things where, like I said, the perception of art imitates reality. And the CIA has an office in Hollywood, and Hollywood has an office in the CIA. So that's telling you right now that the government puts the truth out in the form of entertainment. So you got to watch this TV show, right? Because it's telling you about the smart cities. They live in a simulation that is connected to a dome structure in the form of protection. Hegelian dialectic principles, right? They create all these mechanisms that was facilitated by engineered events. So that engineered reset is where they built these smart cities, right? Just like in a movie. You got to watch this movie. So the AI tetragrammaton technocrat system is operated by a different priesthood, right? So it's a different form of it's like a ultra nationalist synthetic system. That's what it's based on. It's an ultra nationalist synthetic system that's based on the veneration of AI technology, which is a technocratic system that worships a technocratic AI messiah. So political Zionism is the transmutation process, because political Zionism was connected to the patrilineal energies of the Piscean age. Now we're shifting into a technocratic system, right? Because they don't have the genetics to ascend. So like I said, this is all correlated to the Canaanite. This is why they need everything in the form of artificial intelligence to create this synthetic dystopia of this synthetic golden age, with what they call the hereafter, right? They got to create that ideology because it coincides with the timeline of their fictitious Bible, right? Because like I said, there's two different timelines going on. The engineered reset by the oligarchs, the elite, and a prophetic reset that is engineered by the Elohim or the Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them. Two different timelines, right? And they're trying to create all these rituals and create, affliction on the planet to complete all these missions to hit that reset button. So it's based on the 1260 time loop. The 1260 time analysis mechanism is a recursive symbolic intelligence system that goes from processing, output, trauma loop, then input, right? So this is how they keep you in a perpetual state of reincarnation, even at on an energetic level and at a technological level, right? They got to control you, right? Because I told you that the electrical oscillating signals that is connected to these, the radiation of artificial intelligence can keep you stuck in trauma because you don't have the ability to break free from the VMAT2 gene, right? So hold on, I think I got another video for you guys. But like I said, everything that you're seeing taking place right now, from the Pope, everything that's going on in New Orleans, these fault lines being activated, volcanic eruptions. Then you have the Louisiana plantation. These are all rituals for the 9/11 event, right? And the 9/11 event is basically going to be the next event because it's an esoteric codex for the number 19, beginning to end, right? we're going through a shifting process. So everything that you see and taking place right now is the 9/11 event, because Donald Trump is the 9/11 the president. Because his first term, he was 45, second term was 47. 4 plus 7 is 11. 4 plus 5 is 9. 9/11, right? So everything that you see and taking place right now is a form of a ritual. Because one thing you got to understand is that the 8647 code is the 9/11 code. I'm going to say it again. The 8647 code is the 9/11 code. And the reason I say that is because the day that they put out the 8647 code was on May 15th, 2025, and it's exactly 8,647 days apart, which results in September 11th. Because the 8647 code is basically a ritualistic number. So this is why they put out that code, and they put it out on the public media. And I'm going to show you a video that demonstrates that. All right. If you're new to the channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. Share the video, because everything I'm telling you guys tonight is in connection to everything that's, what they perceive as prophetic. So we're going to get into it, this video. All right. So this was, they consider this to be some type of, threat or whatever. So the 8647 code is the 9/11 code. Remember that. So I'm going to play the video.
86 be used for any type of intent to kill or assassinate someone. 86 is, you discard something, you just, ignore it, or it's not something that Jim Comey would have been advocating in terms of any type of violence. And again, he took down the post. I think was the right thing to do. But again, it's so unfortunate that individuals, including, public officials, have just tried to fan the fires here and just bring in.
See, everything that they tell you in the media, they tell you the opposite, right? Because, all throughout this whole Great Awakening period, since, 2019 going up until now, conspiracy theorists, we've been right every time. All the conscious teachers, we've been right every time, right? So that's why I said, you think for yourself why it's still legal to. I'm going to say it again. Think for yourself why it's still legal to. Because eventually it's going to be illegal for you to think for yourself. So you might as well utilize that, independent mindset right now. So the 8647 code is the 9/11 code. So this is also esoterically connected to the Golden Gate Bridge, because the Golden Gate Bridge collapsed turns 88. Golden Gate Bridge turns 88 because it's all correlated to Max Payne. The video game came out on October 17, 2008. And even when you look in the background, it shows you the Brooklyn Bridge that took place, right? So from 2026 to May 27, when the Golden Gate Bridge turns 88, because 88 is esoterically connected to the Pope, because the 88 represents the two keys of papacy of the golden key and the silver key. So that's exactly 6,066 days apart, which is equivalent to 666. So like I said, the universe is mathematical. So this is all esoterically connected to a numerical sequence, because numbers hold an octave vibration that can take you to a different space and time that's connected to the ritualistic systems, right? So now, like I said, we already went through that, the 826 code. Now, this is where you have to start using some critical thinking. It says verbatim in the Wire publication that FEMA has canceled its 4-year strategic plan ahead of hurricane season. Like, why would you do that, right? Unless you're about to engineer something. Like I told you, you got two different timelines, two different dichotomies on the planet that's taking place. You having an engineered reset by the elite, and then you having a reset that's prophetic that can be activated by the ancestors if the engineered reset doesn't take place first, right? So that's why a lot of people are very confused about everything that's going on. They don't know if everything is being controlled by the ancestors or is it the government doing this. So that's basically, how, from my perspective, that I had to extrapolate that to give you the clarification. Now, it tells you right here that FEMA's agency outlines is committed to building a more resilient nation, focusing on equity, climate resilience, and prepare FEMA nation. Because I told you, Donald Trump signed the Second Declaration of Independence on July the 4th of 2020. So that was the restoration of the republic, right? So he's the 19th Republican president, right? I told you, 19 represents Alpha and Omega, beginning to end, the sign of the Lamb, right? So this is why he had to pardon J. Edgar Hoover. The restoration of the republic to where you got three kings on the land. Three kings on the land is being used to resurrect the matriarch, which is the woman, because a woman is under the sleep spell, right? We're going to get into that later. So FEMA, like I said, why would you get rid of the strategic plan? And it says the key aspects of 2022-2026 FEMA strategic plan. So you mean to tell me after 2026 there isn't a strategic plan, right? So that's telling you right now that they're going to just, go inside these underground bunkers and just let everything take place. That's if, they complete certain ritualistic events to hit that reset button, right? So it's not a coincidence. Why would you do this? Why would you cancel the strategic plan for hurricane season? Why would you do that? Unless, like I said, you're trying to engineer something. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to show you guys another video that's, connected to everything that I'm saying. So we're going to demonstrate all the receipts tonight, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Here we go.
Rare tsunami advisory for the entire North American West Coast from Alaska to California following this massive underwater volcanic eruption in the Pacific caught on satellite off the islands of Tonga. And take a look at these images from Pacifica, California, showing waves crashing into the shoreline. Miles of beaches along the coast closed today as residents were told to stay away. And a top seismologist calling this a once-in-a-decade event. Here's ABC's Zareen Shah.
Tonight, a massive underwater volcanic eruption triggering tsunami advisories up and down the entire west coast of the United States. The National Weather Service's tsunami warning system urging residents to move to high ground and away from the shore. 14 million people under alert. The eruption creating stronger waves from Alaska to California.
Now, remember, I was telling you that this is the area where you see my cursor is at. This is the same area as the Cascading and Subduction Zone, where you have the Seamount Axle with that underground volcano. This is the same place in the same areas as Mount Shasta. This is the root chakra of planet Earth, like I was demonstrating. This is the same area where the black sun, the solar eclipse that took place in 2017. This is where it was at. Not a coincidence.
California. These massive waves crashing close to a home near Pacifica, California's pier. Orange County beaches closed. Officials and helicopter warning people to get off the sand. This satellite image from space shows the sheer force of the eruption 40 miles from Tonga. Waves hitting the island nation and flooding in nearby Fiji. Seismologist Dr. Lucy Jones telling us this is the largest tsunami from a volcano she has seen in her decades-long career.
Having it be underwater and large enough to really displace enough water to be a tsunami is a much rarer event.
As Dr. Jones said, tsunami alerts along the West Coast are very rare, about once every decade. The last one here was in 2011. That one caused a lot of damage up and down the coast, and 2 people in Northern California died.
Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, move off those coastlines, right? We only got so much time. Why would they, strategically, put where they want to put, build these smart cities in 2028? That lets you know that something's going to be taking place way before the year of 2028. So please get off the coastlines if you live on the coastlines, right? Just like I've been warning you guys about the airplanes. I've been warning you guys about the earthquakes. I've been warning you guys about everything that's been taking place. But it's inevitable that it has to happen, right? Because we're going through the shift. We're at the apex of solar cycle 25 that manipulates human events on the planet. So it has to happen. All right, so we're going to get back. If you're new to that channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. All right. All right. Now we're going to get back to the presentation at hand. Get those likes up, ladies and gentlemen, so we can beat the algorithm, right? Because these are the type of videos that we need to be getting out. We ain't got time to be hearing about, cryptocurrency. What good is cryptocurrency if the grid goes down, right? What good is the money system, right? They want you to be worried about cryptocurrency, but they not trying to prepare your mind for when the energetic grid goes down. Nobody give a damn about no cryptocurrency. So that's why you have to be very meticulous of who you listen to when it comes to these social media platforms, right? Right? Giving you misinformation when you're talking about archonic forces, or if they talking about crypto. And if they're not talking about everything that's taking place when you're talking about the desolation process of the planet, they're giving you misinformation and they giving you semantics, right? That's what you must understand. So it's not a coincidence when you look at the New York Post, it says that the OpenAI co-founder wanted to build a doomsday bunker to protect company scientists from Rapture book, right? Not a coincidence. Why would you do that around the same time that you cancel the strategic plan from FEMA, right? Why would FEMA do that? Because like I said, hurricane season is from June 1st to November 30th. Now, remember, they said that those volcanoes can erupt in the Seamount Axle on June 5th. That's what they're saying, right? That's what the scientists are saying. So don't timestamp me. I'm not saying it's going to happen. That's what is according to scientists, right? They said it can happen. So you got hurricane season, right? And then, when it comes to hurricanes, what I'm saying? This is how you know the great majority of all these things is engineered, because how would you already have it premeditated that you got the names of these hurricanes that's going to be taking place? So that's how you know that they're being engineered. And I want you to understand something. They use the genetic format of our ancestors to formulate and engineer these hurricanes, right? Because one thing you got to understand about the mitochondrial DNA of the Black woman, it has a replication process and it contains orgone energy. Orgone energy that's connected to the DNA sequence of the carbonated woman on the planet can activate certain hurricanes when you're trying to use it for, frequency modification or weather modification also. So they use your genetics to amplify these, afflictions on the planet, right? That's why a lot of times it'd be named after, indigenous names like Rebecca, Melissa, right? So that's one thing you got to understand about that. And now it tells you about this, like an urgent warning issued over 1,000 feet tall mega tsunami set to hit the U.S. Now, remember I was telling you guys about the four gas giants, right? I told you guys about the four gas giants, talking about, it creates a dodecahedron energy that has a textured angular radiation, and that radiation creates an influx of ether that is connected to the sigil system and is highly magnetic to tetrahedrons, right? So when you're looking at Jupiter, right, I told you the four gas giants is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So a lot of times when they give you the codexes, they're speaking from a microcosmic level. So the four gas giant planets corresponds with everything that's taking place in the ethers, is taking place within the cosmos, and is taking place within the geographical areas of planet Earth. So you have a Jupiter, Florida, a Saturn, Texas, a Uranus, Missouri, and a Neptune, Ohio. Now, all four of these cities, right, they're on fault lines, right? And they're near the 33rd parallel on some of these cities, right? So what I did was I connected all the dots of these cities, and this is what I got. You get a tetrahedron. A tetrahedron is a fire triangle. The fire in the middle that streams down intelligence and activates certain land masses. So it's not a coincidence. They're talking about tsunamis that's going to be hitting certain geographical areas. And I'm going to show you a video that proves my hypothesis when I'm talking about, this correlation here. So I'm going to play this video because I got a lot of receipts for you guys tonight because we got to make it all make sense. We're not going to be talking about crypto. Money don't mean nothing in the next world. Money don't mean shit in the hereafter. They're giving y'all misguided information talking about cryptocurrency. You need to be worried about what's going on right now. So it tells you right here, earthquake, and it's going to show you the same area when I was talking about the 4 gas giant planets, because 4 gas giant planets is how you square the circle in Freemasonry. Squaring a circle is basically the activation of the Fibonacci spinal fire in certain geographical areas that has that tetrahedron. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about.
A massive story. Record this, download this. This is a potentially dangerous story for me to share, but you need to see this because we need answers. I am happy, healthy, and not prone to accidents, just saying. For context, I do a radar and satellite review show on my website every single day. So when I tell you this is freaking weird, I know what freaking weird is. As I was reviewing radar data, I spotted an anomaly in Florida. It appears that a wave was emanating from each tower, which was subsequently pushing the cloud cover and precipitation outward. That alone shouldn't happen. The mainstream narrative is that these towers only track systems, but here we have clouds and rain being moved in a perfect circular outward fashion at the exact same speeds near each tower. And look at this area. When the clouds collide in the middle between 2 separate waves from 2 separate towers. Then as I looked along the Gulf coastline, this is where things got even more crazy. All the towers along the coastline are doing the exact same thing at the exact same times. Texas, Louisiana. Look at Louisiana. The wave is emanating outward to the point where the clouds and precipitation spreads out equally in all directions and is then eliminated. In fact, even more strange is at every area of precipitation near the towers along the Gulf and Atlantic coastline disappears simultaneously. And that's not even the craziest freaking part. The craziest freaking part is the time code for when these waves occurred, about 1940 UTC. These areas felt seismic activity. The local news reported it as an earthquake at a 3.1 magnitude.
Well, at about 2:41 this afternoon, apparently there was an earthquake out about 10 miles deep in the Gulf, 70 miles south of Gulf Shores.
A rare event in this area. You heard me right. The moment we saw these waves around these towers, they reported that there was an earthquake. Here's the thing, though. Earthquakes don't impact the atmosphere. It can't move clouds. It certainly wouldn't move clouds in perfect circular waves emitting outward from each and every tower along the entire Gulf coastline up to the Carolinas on the Atlantic coast. And I'm still trying to figure out, is this emanating from the towers themselves? Or is there something working with them in the ocean? So I looked a little further to see what I could find in the cloud cover in the Gulf around the time of the supposed earthquake. And I found this. What is moving these clouds out there like that?
Tetrahedron, tetraangular radiation vortexes, right? That's what's taking place. It's streaming in intelligence, squaring a circle. Those 4 gas giants is creating ether.
What are you guys doing?
See, I demonstrated that maybe about 6 months ago, right? Not a coincidence. Everything that you see in taking place. Oh, there's another video I got to show you. Because like I said, it's in the same geographical areas as where you have New Orleans, right? So this is why you see in the manholes in New Orleans, it tells you right here that these New Orleans spirits are waking up and they're dancing and are speaking. So the last time you see these manholes, these sewer covers that you see in right here, the last time it did this was around the time of Hurricane Katrina. So like I said, this can be a message from spirit. This can be a message from source to get your ass up off the coast. I've been telling y'all for the longest, get off the coastlines because it's not a safe zone.
Put me down, yeah. I put a spell on you. Because you're mine.
I'm gonna play it again for those who ain't see it. Look at these manhole covers. Like I said, everything that takes place in the physical takes place in the spiritual first. The spirit, the spiritual systems, right? These energetic realms of the ancestors, they're gonna notify you in signs and symbols, right? They're gonna notify you right before it takes place on the physical level. And this is one of the warning signs. They said the last time this took place, when the sewers were doing this, was during the times of Hurricane Katrina. Right? The planet is speaking, the land is conscious, right? It remembers what we forget. So now, since I got that out the way, we can get back to some of the presentation. So like I said, it's within the factions where you see the Florida and all these, it's connected to all these fault lines. Now you got the New Madrid fault line right here, right? And then you got the 33rd parallel right here. So like you got so much energy right here. You got New Orleans, right? This is one of the places. It's a highly spiritual energy in New Orleans, in this geographical area. And there's a lot of mounds in this area. Has a lot of kinetic energy. So that's why it's not a coincidence that there's a tetrahedron that basically demonstrates that sigil, because the four cities of Jupiter, Florida, Saturn, Texas, Uranus, Missouri, and Neptune, Ohio. That's what creates this tetrahedron to pull that ether in. So this is why it's not a coincidence. And in a lot of the cities that I was talking about, those four gas giant cities or whatever, some of those cities was connected to some of the ones that's going to be underwater by 2050. They're not going to give you a designated date or whatever, because they want to create the mysticism and everything behind it. They got to sell it to you. But they're not telling you that it can happen in 2028, 2030, because why would you have the sustainable development goals for the agenda for 2030? So that means that something's going to be taking place before 2030. So like I said, by 2050, we don't know. It can happen today, tomorrow, anytime. That's why I said you have to prepare mentally, physically, and spiritually about what's going to be taking place. So you got all these things that's taking place. You got the Hadron Collider. They're going to turn it on in 2026. And then they're going to give it another run in 2030. Right? They're trying to smash up particles, of atoms, right? To manipulate the space-time continuum, to manipulate the timelines. They want to manipulate the timeline because they know that their power is running out. They're running out of time, right? That's what they use it for. It's kind of like one of those things where like you get a cheat code. The Hadron Collider is the cheat code for the physical world to extend their dominion over the planet. That's what they're using it for. So this is why they timeline jump. So now this is why I said, everything that's taking place right now is in the form of, prophetic divination. So it says right here in the News Nation publication, a former advisor to the Vatican believes a newly elected Pope Leo XIV will lead the Catholic Church in disclosing information about extraterrestrial life. So he's going to be the full disclosure Pope. And the reason that is, so this is not, everything you got to understand, everything operates on cycles within the system. If you understand the cycles and the patterns, you'll be able to understand what's going to be taking place in the future. So I'm going to show you these monolith structures that's been popping up again, and it happened back during the time of 2020 also, when we had the shutdown. All right. So these things that you're seeing right now, these little metal structures that's popping up all over the planet, these are actually, electrical probing devices that probes the geographical land masses of Earth to denote the fact that it's going through a cosmic metamorphic shift, right? When talking about the pole shift, we're at the apex of the shift. So they put these probes in the planet to enhance or to stagnate the consciousness. Depends on what faction of beings who put that there, right? Because it's actually the cosmic tuning forks that either dematerializes or increases the magnetism of Earth. So I'm going to show you this video here. And the last time these showed up was during the time of, when we was in shutdown.
Nevada, it was spotted out by the 7 Magic Mountains with a cryptic message. The 12-foot structure includes a couple of QR codes or cryptocurrency on the backside. Fox 5 reached out to the Nevada Museum of Art, who owns the Magic Mountains. They believe the monolith was installed overnight without permission. Fox 5 spoke to visitors about where they think it came from.
I honestly think it's alien technology, kind of. Like, I think that they're like, aliens kind of like drop it off during the night, like out of nowhere, and it kind of just starts digging into the ground and like gathering information on the Earth's core and everything like that.
The museum is now working with Las Vegas pavers to have it removed. Metro Police say they will not help in the removal. A mysterious discovery made north of the Las Vegas Valley. Metro Police posting this picture to X this morning of a monolith near Gas Peak. The department says its search and rescue team discovered the strange formation over the weekend. The formation is similar to one that popped up in the Utah desert during the pandemic and even here outside Circa in 2020.
Nevada just had a monolith mysteriously suddenly appear in the desert outside Las Vegas. And this week, someone spotted one in Larimer County.
It looks pretty similar as well. Let's take a peek. Sky 9 overhead today. So there it is, about 2 miles north of Horsetooth Reservoir. Tall, rectangular, and very shiny. Like the one in Nevada, seems to be covered in mirrors. The one here in Colorado is on private property, so we left some messages with the owners and Larimer County officials trying to find out more. So far, we haven't heard any more, but as soon as we do, we'll certainly share it with you.
A mysterious monolith that recently appeared in the mountains outside Las Vegas has now been removed. Police say it was taken down yesterday because of public safety and environmental concerns. No one seems to know who put up the mirrored column, which stood about 6'4", or why they did it. Dozens of mysterious monoliths have popped up around the world in recent years.
Police tweeted, quote, "We see a lot of weird things when people go hiking, like not being prepared for the weather, but apparently even police officers were surprised by this metal structure. If this story feels familiar, here's why. In 2020, during the pandemic, another mysterious monolith was discovered in Utah, and it looked pretty similar to this new one in Nevada. So is this the work of an artist, aliens, or random YouTube pranksters?"
I'm going aliens.
I had a feeling you'd take the wild card,
I
Joe.
think aliens too.
Well, what was the explanation for the last one? Do you remember? I don't.
Guys, it's giving art installation, I
There you
think,
go.
right?
Yeah.
But I also disagree. I'm sure they've seen stranger things on
That's
hiking
true.
trails
In
out there in Vegas. Come on.
It has to stay there, though, right?
How about artists who are aliens?
Let's go with that.
Middle ground. I
Okay.
like that. We can agree.
See how the beast always got to sensationalize the information and make it into a form of comedy, right? Like I said, they want to keep you entertained, but they don't want to give you the truth, though.
All right.
The mysterious monolith that has seemed to have reappeared over the weekend has led numerous people out here to try and catch a glimpse of this mystery.
We saw the post and I really wanted to come out and see it because we missed the one in Utah because they had it taken down so quickly, so I wasn't going to risk not getting to see it this time.
A shiny mystery has reappeared far from where it was first spotted on Fremont Street in December of 2020. Metro Police spotted this monolith from the air north of the valley near Gas Peak and posted about it on Monday. For the rest of us, you'll have to travel for miles along this bumpy road before you even get to the hiking trails.
No matter where you step, you just slide down. So, and it was 3.3 miles and 2,100 feet to the top.
Yeah.
So it was a hike.
Which is where we met Alicia Wallace and James Davis out for their second attempt looking for the object.
We searched for hours last night, hiking all the way up to the top of Gas Peak, and did not have any luck finding it, so today we're out again.
This note left at the trailhead simply says the monolith is not on this trail, so they will be heading to the other side of the mountain.
We were pretty excited when we found out that it was going to be near a trail that we are familiar with.
Dean Marecki of Skyline Helicopter Tours spotted a similar looking monolith 3 years ago, shooting this video of it. At this point, not sure if it is the same one, but it's causing a stir in the area.
How you know that these monolithic structures are not, cosmic watermarks for safe zones to go inside? There might be a cave system, to where you're able to escape calamity. Just something to think about.
In Lilo and Stitch, aliens make their presence known with a spaceship. But what if in real life the announcement came in the form of an art installation? Yesterday, the Las Vegas Metro Police Department let folks on social media know about the appearance of a mysterious monolith on a trail north of the city. They wrote, "We see a lot of weird things when people go hiking," and asked, "How did it get up there?"
I've never seen this before. Always looks like a UFO putting something down.
As you may know, this comes just 2 months after a man discovered another Washington Monument-looking thing in Wales, and he said there were no footsteps around it at all.
What the heck is that?
And in 2020, many similar-looking structures were found across the world, starting with this beauty in the desert of Utah. It was spotted accidentally by wildlife officials while they were counting bighorn sheep from a helicopter.
Even going down there, they were nervous, like were they going to get teleported to another dimension or something? Upon closer inspection, this is definitely a human-made object.
But could humans have then, in the coming weeks, also dropped off more mystery shapes in Romania, England, California, and Montana? Just kidding, that's from the movie Arrival. But some reports say that year there were around 24 discovered in just a few short weeks.
I guess this is the thing now, right?
Thus, with so many popping up in 2020 and now a few more in 2024, it makes you wonder, A, do aliens just love...
Now, like I said, these can be, to warn you of a cycle that's taking place. The 1260 artificial time analysis mechanism time loop, right? That's letting you know because the last time that took place, that's when we was on lockdown because of the draconian juice. And there's a new pestilence that's going to be taking place because the World Economic Forum, they said it was inevitable that it was going to happen. So that's something to think about.
Of an election year. Or B, are we all being pranked in an admirably communal worldwide effort? Well, for the internet, the latter just is not as fun. One commenter on the Las Vegas Facebook post writing, quote, "I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens."
Now, the only monolith I'm 100% convinced was made by aliens, this one, guys, constructed from gingerbread. I've tried many times to make a gingerbread house, and I've never gotten it to be 7 feet tall. What do you guys think?
Good point.
So that's pretty much the edification on that. So we're going to get back to the presentation here at hand. If you're new to the channel, hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Get the likes up, ladies and gentlemen, so we can beat the algorithm. So yeah, he's a disclosure pope, right? So now this is all connected to Donald Trump because I told you how everything that's taking place right now, they have a desolation program. They have a mass extinction level event that's going to be taking place eventually. And it has to happen before, the agenda for 2030. So it's not a coincidence that Donald Trump, he said right here, he said, "I just completed my 2-hour call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia." And then I'm looking for something. Yeah, he said, "I will say now rather than later, Russia wants to do a large-scale trade with the United States when this catastrophic bloodbath is over." So what bloodbath are you talking about, right? What type of bloodbath are you talking about? What is he talking about when he says that Russia wants to do a large-scale trade with the United States when this catastrophic bloodbath is over? What bloodbath are you talking about? Are you talking about this right here? A new form of pestilence that, a new such and such just came out? Are you talking about this right here? A form of pestilence that eats you from the inside out, right? So are you talking about this right here? A mass extinction level event to where you got to have Costco has confirmed they will shut down 6 624 locations in 24 hours just in days, leaving Walmart to scoop up the business, right? Because we all know that Walmart is an anagram for the word martial law. So when martial law is activated, that's where you're going to begin your resources from through FEMA. When you have this catastrophic event, this bloodbath that Donald Trump was talking about when he was talking about with Vladimir Putin. This came from his Twitter. So they let you know right now that something's going to be taking place. So this is how you know, this is just my, my logical assertion and from my, independent research. When it comes to a lot of these political leaders, a lot of these leaders and celebrities and, the ones that got status and hierarchy in government, a lot of them, they fake their death. They pay a high ticket. They pay an intrinsic amount of money to pay for their death, to fake their death. And I think that's where they go inside these Gitmo bases. But the thing is that these Gitmo bases is actually gateways to the underground cities, just like I was talking about in the movie Paradise on Hulu, right? How you know that these Gitmo bases is not underground cavern cities that's connected to these cave systems, right? And I'm going to show you a video that basically demonstrates that, right? It's talking about, how they use skin masks to replace certain celebrities, right? The ones that's supposed to be in prison and things of that nature, they're not going to prison. They're just being switched out. They're being switched out by a person that's wearing a skin mask while the real one goes to these Gitmo bases where they're supposed to be, in punishment. They actually going into these underground cavern systems. So how you know that Michael Jackson is not there? How you know that Tupac is not there? How you know that all these celebrities and these political leaders that just, vanished off the face of the earth, how you know that they're not inside these underground bunker systems because they paid millions of dollars just to, because they knew that this prophetic event was going to be taking place. And I'm going to show you this video for a second. Okay, here we go. This lets you know right now that it's real when it comes to these skin masks. And when you have the ability to manipulate, the perception of certain formats of certain individuals' faces. So play it.
Mission Impossible is known for, especially when Tom Cruise takes off that mask. Is there any kind of technology that achieves that in the real world of intelligence?
Well, the movies have a lot of options that real life does not offer to you. But the idea of a mask that you could quickly put on, quickly take off was very real and something that we used with some discretion, but we used it when we needed it and got great results.
Did I read that you had a mask that made you look like an African-American man? Is that right?
That was probably the first one that I took public. That means within the CIA. I briefed some directors and told them we had this capability.
This is why it's imperative to use your spiritual discernment and activate your spiritual gifts from an intrinsic level, a mental level, to where you have mental and spiritual fortitude. Because like I said, this is how they infiltrate us with these COINTELPRO agencies, right? How you know that some of these people within the conscious community are actually Europeans wearing skin mask technology, right? It gets that real. So that's why I say you have to be very meticulous of, the infiltration process. You have to be very meticulous of all these people that just come out of nowhere and call themselves being knowledgeable about spirituality and consciousness. People like 607 Unc, right? Who is giving you misinformation when you're talking about the archonic forces. So how you know that's not a European working through the technology of a skin mask to give you misinformation, right? Because you see what he's pushing painted nails. Painted nails is a Luciferian energy that comes from Canaanite culture. It's a sign of deviancy, right? So why would you listen to somebody who is propagating that perception and that ideology to the youth, right? Use your spiritual discernment. So like I said, and then also when it comes to that, how you know that they don't use this to cause, race wars and things of that nature, right? They use these skin masks. They use it in the form of an infiltration process. So especially during this time period, because like I said, we're in solar cycle 25, so a lot of these skin masks is going to hide the fact that, they're going to try to hide themselves because a lot of them is going to go through that metamorphosis to where they cannot hold the format of a draconian reptilian because the G-force and the radiation from the sun is breaking down their genetics. So a lot of times they, in order to hide the fact that they're going through a state of metamorphosis on a genetic level, they have put a skin suit on or a skin mask, right? To where you're not able to see the physiology of them shapeshifting on a physical level when you're looking at their face.
That means within the CIA, I briefed some directors and told them we had this capability. We were looking to be able to change your gender and your ethnicity and even perhaps create a twin if we needed that.
Hold on. So, in your estimation, how lifelike realistic are the masks? If you were in the room with this person wearing the mask, would you notice that it's a mask?
You would not notice unless you told a really hysterical joke and the person couldn't laugh hysterically. It had limits. It could smile, couldn't laugh hysterically.
I know.
I wore those masks in a couple of pretty tight situations, and no one knew until I announced it.
Jonna, is it right that you wore that in front of George H.W. Bush? And could he?
Like I said, it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. Kamala was wearing a mask. Joe Biden was wearing a mask. How you know that Donald Trump is not wearing a mask? How you know that Elon Musk is not wearing a mask? This is what you must understand because we're going through the shift. And when we go through the shift, some of these people, they got to go hide out and have replacements, right? This is why they go hide out in these underground bunker systems, right? Or they hide out because, like I said, the G-force radiation is breaking down the genetic meat suit to where it's going to show the person as being a draconian reptilian. So this is why, to combat that energy, they got to throw on a skin suit or a skin mask. That's what you must understand because we're going through the shift.
Hell?
I did wear it. Brent Scowcroft was in the room, Bob Gates, John Sununu, Judge Webster. No one. Judge Webster knew because he was head of the CIA at the time. No one else had any idea until I took it off.
No idea. I had no idea.
So you did it just to show them that this was possible. Is that right?
Absolutely. I wanted the president. Yep. I wanted the president to see that we had taken disguise to a really dramatically new level.
Did you take one home as a souvenir? Are you in that? Is that you? Are you in there? Is that you in the mask?
This is just me. In the image, yeah, that's me.
What?
Taken off my head.
What?
And John Sununu had not been listening. He'd been working on his own notes. So he just glanced up when I did that, and he let out this funny little noise, like not a shriek, somewhere between a shriek and a squeak.
So full disclosure, on our call about today's show yesterday, I had to do kid pickup at the same time. I missed this briefing, and nothing has prepared me for what we're talking about right now. And this is really quite mind-blowing.
So I read that the mask had to be something you could put on in 10 seconds or take off, and you didn't need a mirror as well.
Wow.
But you could put it on in a parking garage without a mirror in the dark.
Jonna,
that's how you know. Full disclosure right there. That's how you know that some of these people are draconian reptilians and they wearing skin masks. You know what I'm saying? These ain't just humans wearing skin masks. You got, entities wearing them too. So like I said, this is how you know when it comes to these Gitmo bases. So this is why Donald Trump wants Greenland too, right? Because you also got to watch the movie Greenland. That was one of the cave systems that they went inside to go to these underground cities, just like in the movie Paradise. You got to watch these movies. The movies is where they got the truth in it, right? So now it says this: what Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia, and I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. So they tell you right now. So this is why he wants to build up that Golden Dome, right? Is this why he wants to build a Golden Dome? Because like I said, they operate under Hegelian dialectic principle. Problem, reaction, solution. Oh, the problem is Russia, China, Iran. The reaction, put a Golden Dome over the planet. The solution is to create a energetic smart city to control the energy and frequency and vibration of humans on the planet Earth in a form of a cybernetic dictatorship. That's their solution. That is their synthetic golden age. Their golden age is to entrap humanity in a firmament within the firmament because they know we're going through the pole shift, right? That's what's going on. We're going to get into that later. And I'm going to show you another video about Donald Trump talking about the Golden Dome for those who thinks, it's a conspiracy. They spending trillions of dollars and billions of dollars to build this. All right. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Without your vision, willing to say and do things when other people wanted to look away and pretend like the threat didn't exist, or be focused on foreign adventurism, some other threat that we've been told is affecting us. When you looked at the data, sir, from Russia to the Communist Chinese and their capabilities, what they're trying to do to supersede us and threaten us, how do we find the best innovators, the best military leaders, the best companies, tech companies? You mentioned open architecture. That's exactly right. So multiple companies can pour into this, sir. It's a layered defense. So if you miss at one, you catch at the next. And it integrates existing technologies that can speak to each other. So it moves quickly while also investing in further ranging space-based interceptors. So our enemies, our adversaries are going to pay a lot of attention to this, just like they have to President Trump from day one. Sir, you're defending the homeland, defending the American people. It's going to benefit my kids, grandkids, all of ours in this room. So thank you for your leadership. We're going to charge ahead as fast as we can.
Very good. Great job, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The perception of art imitates reality. This is the same shit that's taking place on the TV series Paradise on Hulu. You can't make this up. You cannot make this up. And I was talking about the Golden Dome 2 weeks ago. I told you guys about the Golden Dome. Right? So now we're going to finish out the presentation. Now, everywhere this little bastard goes, some type of desolation takes place. But no, what you're seeing taking place right now when it comes to this Annabelle doll, now this is also esoterically connected to these ritualistic events that's taking place on the geographical area of America. Now, the doll has a homonucleus occult symbolism to it. So it's based on occult creation that has a spiritual craftsmanship. Because when you get into ancient Hermeticism and you get into, alchemy and things of that nature, the body in itself of the doll is a representation of, a material vehicle, right? Which is the body. And the cob, which is the spirit. So this is why in the movie Chucky, his name was Buddy, because Buddy is the inner voice, which is the inner child, which is the divine spark. So a lot of our ancestors, they can transmute to different vessels and different, dolls or whatever by way of horizontal gene transfer, because it operates by way of transduction, conjugation, and transformation. So you can transmute the consciousness out and put it inside a different person. You can transmute the consciousness out and put it inside a different, a doll or whatever. So this is why, you got to understand something. Everything that's taking place right now is, numerical. Everything is operating by way of it's an esoteric message, basically. Because Chucky, the actor who was playing as Chucky, he passed away at 61 yesterday, right? And then you got this Annabelle doll taking place. So the ancestors is working through this physical vessel of what we call the Annabelle doll, right? That's the esoteric meaning behind it. Because one thing you got to understand about the doll is a representation of the body, which is something you make sacred through spiritual work, right? To where the doll becomes a living temple, right? If you watch the first Chucky, it basically demonstrates on how they had to do a dark black magic incantation in order for the vessel or the spirit of the soul and the consciousness is able to be transmuted inside of the Chucky doll. So the same thing takes place when you're talking about karmic retribution, when you had the burning down of the plantation. The ancestors is working through the doll, right? So don't be surprised if it goes to, different, historical landmarks and then all of a sudden, other plantations burn down and other places of colonization get burned down or whatever. Don't be surprised. Now, Now, everything that you're seeing taking place right now, when you're talking about the activation of the Cascadian Subduction Zone and the New Madrid Fault Line, and all these fault lines that's connected to the San Andreas Fault Line and Mount Shasta being the root chakra of planet Earth, the same place where you got the Seamount Axle and the volcano, and also, where the place where the energetic frequency of the black sun was at in 2017. So that is basically the apex of the activation of nature, because the activation of nature is the rise of the matriarch. So this is why you see the Prophet Noah Ali, he is coming out of the waters with the black woman, because the black woman is a representation of the rise of the matriarch. It's the energetic rise up of the matriarch, which is the divine feminine energy, because the black woman, she's under the sleep spell of King Gu. So the sleep spell of King Gu is the sleep spell of materialism, which is the sleep spell of the illusionary world, right? The sleep spell of the dualistic paradox. So he's resurrecting the woman by lifting her back up. So that's why it has to be three kings on the land, because the three kings on the land are the ones that's going to bring in the matriarch. So this is why Donald Trump, he has pardoned and commuted Larry Hoover's sentence, right? So three kings on the land, Larry Hoover, Tookie Williams, and Dr. Malachi York, Free Baba, right? Free the master teacher. So when you got three kings on the land, this is where you can raise up the matriarch, right? To where the queen rules through the three kings, because the three kings are the ones who are the chiefs of the tribes, right? Because I told you, remember, the Moore Science Temple, the indigenous connected to it, it tells you that the geographical landmass of America the title holders of the geographical landmass of America are the Moors. The 1848 Supreme Court decision on June 6th, right? So in order to get the land back, you got to resurrect the woman, right? Get her up under from the sleep spell of King Gu. So this is why I said he's going to be the next one that's going to be pardoned, because there's no DNA evidence, no videotape evidence, no picture evidence, and he was sentenced to 135 years, right? Without no evidence. That's what you must understand. This is why, like I said, Donald Trump is not doing this just because. He's doing it because he has to, because he knows that we're going through reset. And when you go through a reset, there's an energetic shift of power to where you give back the matriarch in the republic to the indigenous people, right? He's not, creating a reset on purpose. He's not doing this. He's doing it because he has to. He's not doing it because, certain things that he must has to take place or whatever. But for those coming in, I'm going to give a brief synopsis and a rundown about everything that's taking place before we get up out of here. Now, like I said, we're at the apex of the cosmic shift. The planet is going through a state of metamorphosis. So you got to understand that the planet Earth in itself is a living entity. So that means that the energetic frequency of the geographical landmass of Mount Shasta, where you have the Cascadian Subduction Zone and where you have the Seamount Axle, when you're talking about that underground volcano, you got to understand that that geographical area is conscious. Because one thing you got to understand about planet Earth, it remembers what we forget. It remembers the colonization process. It remembers the imperialistic period that was extrapolated by the European powers. So that's why I said the Earth is a living entity. It's conscious. So when you look at the energetic frequency in the embodiment of planet Earth is basically a representation. Planet Earth is basically a representation of the mountains, which is the bones, the rivers, which is the blood, the wind, which is the breath, the fire, which is the spirit, and the trees, which is the nervous system. So the planet is a living entity. It's a land of consciousness. So the same places where you see where the Cascadian Subduction Zone is the same area where the Ring of Fire on the Pacific coast, right? So, and then you also got 1 million giant eggs that they don't even know about. They don't know what type of species it came from. But like I said, we don't know if those are Leviathan eggs, right? So it goes in, I'm basically breaking down, the desolation process, the activation of coronal holes that has the sigil of the Lamb, and how they're going to activate these smart cities, the perception of art imitates reality. So the same thing that took place in paradise is actually happening right now in real time. So that means that the reset has to take place first, then you build the smart cities. Then you build this fake cybernetic technocratic system that is being controlled by artificial intelligence, just like in a movie. They're trying to find another way to keep you stuck in a 1260 time loop. But the only way to break that cycle is when you activate the vector codes, which is ninth dimensional knowledge. So it gives like, a brief rundown about everything that's taking place. It's really, breaking down the shift in full spectrum. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I've been telling y'all, about the desolation process that's been taking place on the planet all throughout my transmissions. I've been telling y'all video after video and how it energetically lines up with all the receipts. Because one thing you got to understand about when it comes to, information that's based on eschatology is that you can't just be subjected to one-dimensional edification. You can't just be one-dimensional with the information. You got to touch in on every different topic in order to pull the truth out of it to give people the clarification that they need. Because some people in Christianity is not going to understand the prophecies in the Holy Quran. Some people in the Holy Quran ain't going to understand the prophecies that's taking place in the media because they don't watch TV. So this, like I said, I'm going to be the medium and I'm going to be the catalyst to bridge the two. I'm bringing in modern day information mixed in with old information that lines up with prophecy. So that's how you manipulate the timelines of the past and the present, and you put them together, to where you get the truth about the future, right? Because if you don't understand what took place in the past, your ass ain't going to understand what took place in the future. So you got to stay connected to the modern day timeline in order to understand, the dualistic energies of the past and the future, right? Because like I said, we're in solar cycle 25, and the vibrational frequency of planet Earth is going to enhance because these coronal holes have an electrical conduction that enhances the magnetism of planet Earth. And it contains the sigil of the Lamb. The Lamb are the ones who have non-ether genetical faculties because the non-ether is connected to the Fibonacci sequence, which is the fingerprint of God, the fingerprint of the universe. So that means that you have to raise up your consciousness to activate the vector codes to get that ninth dimensional knowledge to where you break free from the VMA2 gene. You break free from the holonomic brain theory. You break free from the firmament. You don't have that encryption over the mind. So that's why I said consciousness is what's, activating these energies on the planet. So it's not a coincidence. It's like one of those things that, people are scared that we got to go through the transformative shift. They scared that we got to go through the process, but we the ones asking for it. Because the more that you speak truth to power, the more it's going to enhance the vibration of planet Earth. The more you speak truth, the more you're going to see more calamity. Because the truth of the tongue is the sword, and the tongue is energetically connected to the heart. Because only words from the heart can reach the heart. So when you speak truth to power by way of the frequency of love, that's when you're able to manipulate physical reality. You manipulate timelines. You collapse time, right? So the more you speak truth to power, that's when you become a catalyst in an anomaly in the matrix. You the glitch that causes interface transitions. That's what this is all about. So don't be scared that your ass is, you mad that earthquakes are coming and all these other things, and that you lost your car in an earthquake and tsunamis or whatever. You asked for it. We've been speaking about this for the longest, right? Because like I said, when you speak, carbon emissions come out. That carbon magnetizes to the dodecahedron. And that dodecahedron, which is ether, materializes in physical form to where it manipulates the subatomic structures of everything that is created by photonic energy, right? So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. End of transmission.